Welcome to Lore of the Ring, where we uncover the hidden roads of Middle-earth and tell the tales that Tolkien never wrote. Before we begin, take a moment to let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time of day or night this narration has reached you. Thunder rolls across the ashen plains of Gorgoroth. The sky, thick with ember and shadow, churns above the ruins of Barad-dûr. The towers have fallen. The Dark Lord is unmade. And yet, in the silence that follows the breaking of the world, something stirs. Not the armies of men returning in triumph. Not the eagles sweeping down from the north, but a single figure, bent beneath the weight of something unseen, moving slowly through the smoke. His robes are torn. His staff, once white, is scorched black at the edges. Ash clings to his beard like the dust of ages. He walks alone through the gates of Mordor, and no song is sung for his departure. No herald announces his return. The gray pilgrim moves in silence, as he has so often moved, through shadow, through fire, through the unremembered corners of history. But this time something is different. This time, beneath the folds of his weathered cloak, a faint glimmer pulses, barely visible, easily dismissed. A spark, a tremor of light where no light should be. Few know what the gray pilgrim carried when he left the fires of the enemy's land. Fewer still would dare to ask. For Gandalf the White, Mithrandir, Olorin of the Blessed Realm, he who faced the Balrog, he who broke the staff of Saruman, he who stood alone before the gates of Minas Tirith, returned from Mordor not as a conqueror, but as a keeper of secrets. And in the days that followed, those who walked beside him noticed a change, a distance in his gaze, a hesitation in his words, as if he bore not only the weariness of war, but the burden of something far older, something he could not or would not name. The records tell us that Gandalf departed Middle-earth swiftly after the coronation of King Elessar, that he lingered only briefly in Minas Tirith, spoke sparingly at the feasts, and withdrew often to the high towers where none could follow. Some say he was weary. Others that his task was complete. But among the wise, those who remember the deeper threads of history, there are whispers. Whispers that Gandalf bore not only Narya, the ring of fire, upon his hand, but something darker, something taken from the very heart of Sauron's dominion, something that should never have left that cursed land. The wind howls through the black gate, and the iron hinges creak like the lament of the damned. In the distance, Mount Doom still smolders, its fires diminished but not extinguished. The land itself seems to groan under the weight of its history, millennia of torment, of malice concentrated and poured into stone and earth. This is a place where hope comes to die, where even the bravest hearts falter. And yet Gandalf walked through it as if searching for something, not fleeing, not celebrating, searching. What could he have sought in such desolation? What could possibly remain in the ruins of the Dark Tower that would be worth retrieving? The One Ring was destroyed. The Nazgûl were swept away. Sauron's armies were scattered or slain. By all accounts, Mordor was a tomb, empty, broken, devoid of anything but death. And yet, in the silence between the breaking of the ring and the return of the White Wizard, hours passed. Hours unaccounted for. Hours during which Gandalf walked alone through the rubble of Barad-dûr, descending into depths that no other living soul dared to tread. When he emerged, his face was drawn. His eyes held a light that was both fierce and sorrowful. And he spoke to no one of what he had seen. As the flames of Mount Doom fade into memory, as the free peoples celebrate their deliverance, one question remains unanswered. One thread unspoken. If the One Ring was destroyed, if Sauron's power was scattered to the winds, Then why did Gandalf flee so quickly to the west? Why did he refuse the honors offered him? Why, in the last days before his departure, did Círdan the shipwright look upon him with such sorrow, not relief, but sorrow, as if he understood a truth too heavy to bear? He came not empty-handed from the shadow, and some say not untainted. In the archives of Rivendell, beneath layers of dust and fading ink, there are records that few have read. The Red Book of Westmark speaks of the War of the Ring, yes, but it speaks in the voice of hobbits, brave, earnest, but limited in their understanding of the deeper powers at work. The writings of Faramir, Prince of Ithilien, offer glimpses of greater mysteries, veiled in the language of the learned. And then there are the Grey Annals, fragments preserved in Imladris, half forgotten by even the elves themselves. Chronicles of the Astari, notes penned by Elrond in the margins of older texts. Letters exchanged between Galadriel and Gandalf in the years before the quest, written in scripts so archaic that only the eldest could decipher them. These are the sources we must turn to, not for certainty, but for possibility. For the truth of Middle-earth is not found in proclamations or histories written for kings. It is found in the silences, in the gaps between words, in the places where even the wisest hesitate to speak. Consider the testimony of those who stood closest to Gandalf in the final days. Aragorn, who knew him longer than any living man, remarked in his private journals that the wizard seemed burdened by a weight invisible to mortal eyes. Legolas, whose elven sight could pierce the veils of the world, noted that Gandalf's aura had changed, that where once it burned bright and clear, now it flickered with shadows that did not belong. Even Frodo, the ring-bearer who knew the weight of carrying cursed things better than anyone, sensed something amiss. In one passage of the Red Book, he writes, "Gandalf was kind to me as always, but there was a distance in him now, as if part of him had already sailed west, leaving only a shadow to walk among us." These fragments are scattered, easily overlooked, but together they paint a picture, a portrait of a being transformed by what he had witnessed or what he had taken. Gandalf was not merely a wizard. This much we know. He was Olorin, one of the Maiar, spirits formed before the world itself. He walked in the gardens of Lorien in the Undying Lands, where the trees are silver and the stars sing in harmony with the music of the Aenir. He learned wisdom from Nienna, the Lady of Mercy, who taught him pity and patience. And he was sent to Middle-earth not to rule, not to wield power openly, but to guide, to counsel, to kindle the hearts of men and elves in their darkest hours. But every being, even those of divine origin, carries within them the memory of what they once were. And Olorin's memory was long, longer than the mountains, longer than the rising and setting of 1,000 suns. He remembered the forging of the world. He remembered the discord introduced by Melkor, the first Dark Lord, whose pride sought to unmake the music before it could fully bloom. And he remembered, too, the arts of creation, the crafting of matter from spirit, the binding of light into form. For these were the secrets of Alla the smith, the Vala who shaped the bones of the earth and taught the dwarves their craft. It is written in the Ainulindale that Alla's greatest students were not all faithful. Sauron, too, learned at the forge of the smith. Before he fell into the service of Morgoth, before he became the Dark Lord, he was a Maiar of Alla, a maker, a shaper of things. His talent was unmatched. His knowledge of metals and enchantments was surpassed only by the Valar themselves. But talent, unmoored from humility, becomes pride. And pride, wedded to power, becomes tyranny. Here, then, is the uncomfortable truth that the wise rarely speak aloud. Gandalf and Sauron are kin, not brothers but cousins in spirit, both Maiar, both servants of the Valor in the beginning, both possessed of knowledge that transcends mortal understanding. The difference between them is not one of nature, but of choice. Gandalf chose humility. Sauron chose dominion. Gandalf chose service. Sauron chose mastery. But the potential for corruption exists in both. The knowledge they share is the same. And knowledge, as any scholar knows, is never neutral. It can heal or harm depending on the hand that wields it. The question, then, is this. When Gandalf entered Mordor after the fall of Sauron, when he walked alone through the ruins of the Dark Tower, what did he see? Did he see only destruction? Did he see only the broken remnants of a failed regime? Or did he see something deeper? Something that connected him across the ages to the being Sauron once was. A remnant of Allah's teaching. A fragment of the old craft. A spark of the creative fire that both had once served. In the unfinished tales, there is a passage easily missed in which Gandalf speaks to Elrond about the nature of evil. He says, "The shadow is not an entity unto itself. It is the corruption of something that was once good. Melkor was the mightiest of the Aenir. Sauron was the most skilled. Their fall was not into nothingness, but into a twisted reflection of what they were meant to be. And in that reflection, fragments of the original light still remain buried, suffocated, but not wholly destroyed." What if this was more than philosophy? What if it was a statement of fact? In the smoke of Sauron's ruin, not all that was forged in darkness was lost. We must return now to the very beginning, to the time before time, to the Ainulindale, the music of the Aenir, when the world was not yet made and all things existed only as themes sung before the throne of Eru Ilúvatar, the One. It was there, in that first harmony, that Olorin's spirit first took form. A gentle theme woven with compassion and patience. A melody that did not demand the spotlight but supported the chorus. And alongside him, other Maiar sang. Among them, the followers of Allah, who would later be called the Smiths. Their theme was one of creation, of shaping, of taking the raw substance of air and crafting from its structures of beauty and purpose. Allah was beloved among the Valor for his craft. He was the maker of mountains, the carver of valleys, the architect of the world's foundation. His hands shaped the very bones of the earth, and in his forge, the elements themselves were given form. Stone and metal, crystal and clay, all bowed to his will, not through force, but through understanding. For Allah knew the secret songs of matter, the hidden harmonies that bind atom to atom, the resonances that transform chaos into structure, and he delighted in teaching. Among his students were the dwarves, whom he fashioned in secret, desiring to create children who would love stone and metal as he did. This was an act of impatience, perhaps even of hubris, for only Eru had the right to create independent life. But Allah's intent was pure. He wished only to share his joy in creation, to have companions who would marvel at the beauty of a well-cut gem or a perfectly forged blade. When Eru discovered what Allah had done, the smith offered to destroy his creations. But Eru, seeing the humility in Allah's heart, granted life to the dwarves and gave them a place in the music. This is the nature of Allah, powerful, creative, but ultimately humble before the One. But also among his followers were Maiar of great skill, Curumo, who would become Saruman the White, and Meron, who would become Sauron the Deceiver. Both learned from Allah the principles of craftsmanship. Both excelled beyond measure, and both, in time, fell to the temptation that haunts all makers, the desire not merely to create, but to control. Imagine, then, the forge of Valinor in the elder days. Flames that do not consume but illuminate. Anvils that ring with the music of creation. And around them, spirits of fire and craft, learning to bind their will into matter, to make things that endure, to shape the world not through brute force but through art. The light in that place must have been almost unbearable, not harsh, but intense with purpose. Every strike of the hammer was a note in a greater symphony. Every shaped piece of metal was a word in a longer poem. This was creation as prayer, as worship, as an echo of the music that first called the world into being. Sauron excelled at this. He was, before his fall, the greatest of Allah's students. His understanding of the principles of creation was profound. He could take formless matter and give it purpose. He could inscribe runes that held enchantments for millennia. And he learned, too, the dangerous art of binding living will into inanimate objects, a craft that would later give birth to the rings of power. In those early days, his work was celebrated. The other Maiar marveled at his skill. Even Allah himself praised Mehran's craftsmanship, seeing in him the potential to become one of the great shapers of Arda. But here is the tragedy. The same fire that creates can also destroy. The same knowledge that builds can also corrupt. When Melkor, the fallen Vala, began his rebellion against the order of Eru, he sought out the most talented of the Maiar to join him. And Sauron, proud of his abilities and hungry for greater challenges, was seduced. Not by promises of power initially, but by the promise of perfection. Melkor whispered that the world, as the Valar were shaping it, was flawed, that it could be made better, more orderly, more beautiful, and that only those with the courage to transcend the limitations imposed by Eru could achieve this perfection. When Sauron turned from the light, when he bent his craft toward domination, he did not forget what he had learned. He twisted it. He inverted it. Where Allah sought to uplift, Sauron sought to control. Where the Valar created freely, Sauron created chains. His forges in Mordor became places of torment, where beauty was bent into terror and craft became a weapon. The rings of power, his masterwork, were meant to heal and preserve, but they became instruments of enslavement. Even the One Ring, which held all his art and power, was a perversion of the creative flame he had once served. And yet, deep within the ruins of Barad-dûr, deep within the molten core of Mount Doom, something of that original fire remained. Not Sauron's malice, not his lust for power, but a fragment of the craft itself, an ember of Allah's teaching, buried beneath centuries of corruption, a spark that still remembered what it was to create, not to dominate. A memory of the forge in Valinor, where all was light and purpose. What if Gandalf, upon entering Mordor, sought not only to destroy, but to recover? What if he recognized, in the ashes of Sauron's forge, a trace of the old knowledge, a piece of the creative flame that had been corrupted but not extinguished? And what if he took it, not for power, not for himself, but to keep it from falling into the hands of those who would misuse it once more? For men, in their ambition, would seek it out. They would dig through the ruins, searching for artifacts, for weapons, for anything that might grant them an edge over their rivals. And if they found this ember, this fragment of divine craft, they would not understand it. They would seek to use it, to bend it to their will. And in doing so, they would unleash a catastrophe as great as Sauron himself. Gandalf knew this. He had lived among men for centuries. He loved them, admired their courage and creativity, but he also knew their weakness. Their mortality bred impatience. Their fear bred ambition, and ambition, unchecked, bred tyranny. And so, perhaps, he made a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his days. He took the ember, wrapped it in his will. hid it where even the sharpest eyes could not see, and he carried it, alone and in silence, knowing that to reveal it would be to doom it. Was Gandalf's theft an act of defiance or of pity for his fallen brother? There is a moment deep within the minds of Moria when Gandalf speaks words that echo across the ages. Confronted by the Balrog, a demon of shadow and flame, he stands upon the bridge of Khazad-dûm and declares, "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor." The secret fire, not a metaphor, not a poetic flourish, but a truth so fundamental that even the Balrog, ancient and terrible as it was, hesitated before it. The Balrog was a Maya, like Gandalf, corrupted by Melkor in the Elder Days, twisted into a creature of shadow and hatred. But even in its fallen state, it recognized the invocation of the secret fire. For that name held power, authority. It was a reminder of what both Gandalf and the Balrog once were: servants of the music, children of the One, spirits who sang the world into being. What is the secret fire? The texts give us hints, but never full clarity. In the Ainulindale, it is called the flame imperishable, the power by which Eru Ilúvatar gives true being to all things. Without it, creation is mere illusion. Without it, even the greatest of the valor can only shape what already exists. They cannot bring forth life. The flame imperishable is the source, the origin. The divine spark that turns thought into reality, music into matter, spirit into flesh. It is the difference between a sculpture and a living child, between a painting of a tree and the tree itself, with roots that drink water and leaves that turn sunlight into life. The flame imperishable is what makes reality real, and it dwells with Eru alone. Melkor, the first Dark Lord, sought the flame imperishable in the void before the world began. He searched for it endlessly, desiring to possess the power of creation for himself. For Melkor was the mightiest of the Ainur, and in his pride, he believed he should have the right to create independently, without reference to Eru or the other valor. He descended into the void, the unbeing that exists outside the circles of the world, and there he searched. For ages uncounted, he wandered in the emptiness, seeking the source of all creation. But he did not find it, for the secret fire dwells with Eru alone and cannot be taken or stolen, or so the writings say. But perhaps, and here we tread carefully, for we are moving beyond the certainty of recorded lore, perhaps a lesser echo of that flame was woven into the fabric of Arda itself. A reflection, a shadow of the true fire embedded in the core of the world. Not the flame imperishable in its fullness, but a spark of it, enough to kindle life, enough to sustain creation, enough, if misused, to unmake it. Consider, how else could the world sustain itself? How could life continue to grow, to change, to evolve, if the flame imperishable remained wholly separate from Arda? The valor shaped the world, yes, but they did not give it life in the truest sense. Plants grow, animals breed. Even the stones, over millennia, shift and change. There is a vitality in Arda that suggests something more than mere matter arranged by divine sculptors. There is a pulse, a heartbeat, a creative force that continues even when the valor turn their attention elsewhere. This is the heart of the mystery. Gandalf's mission, his true purpose in Middle-earth, was never simply to defeat Sauron. It was to guard the secret fire, to ensure that the divine spark woven into the world did not fall into the hands of those who would corrupt it beyond redemption. Sauron, in his making of the rings, had touched that fire. He had learned to manipulate its echoes, to bind souls and bend wills. The One Ring was not merely a tool of domination. It was an attempt to harness the creative power of Eru himself, to bend the flame to Sauron's will. But the fire itself remained beyond him. Even Sauron, with all his knowledge and malice, could not claim it fully. He could only touch its edges, bend its reflections, use its echoes. The true flame remained hidden, buried deep within the roots of the world, until, perhaps, in his final desperation, he sought to extract it directly from the roots of Mount Doom, to claim the creative power that Melkor had once sought in vain. In the years before the War of the Ring, Sauron's power grew with terrifying speed. His armies multiplied. His will reached further and further across Middle-earth, and the fires of Mount Doom burned hotter than they had in centuries, as if fueled by something more than volcanic fury. What if Sauron had succeeded, at least partially? What if, in the depths beneath his tower, he had uncovered a fragment of the secret fire? Not enough to remake the world, but enough to sustain his power even if the One Ring were destroyed. A failsafe. A hidden reserve of creative energy that could allow him to endure, to rebuild, to rise again. And if he succeeded, even partially, then the destruction of the One Ring would not have been enough. For the fragment of the secret fire, hidden within the depths of Mordor, would still remain. Dormant, dangerous, waiting. Gandalf knew this. He had always known. From the moment he was sent to Middle-earth, he understood that the true danger was not Sauron himself, but what Sauron represented, the corruption of the creative flame, the perversion of the music, the twisting of divine art into instruments of tyranny. And so, in the aftermath of Sauron's fall, he descended into the ruin. He walked into the places where no other dared to tread. He navigated the collapsed halls of Barad-dûr, descended into the furnaces beneath Mount Doom, and there, in the heart of the darkness, he found it not the flame imperishable, but its echo. A shard of creative fire, corrupted and dimmed but not destroyed, pulsing faintly in the ashes, waiting for a hand skilled enough to claim it. And he took it, wrapped it in his will, hid it within the folds of his spirit, where even the keenest eyes could not perceive it. And thus he bore the light of Eru into exile in silence. The relic was small, or perhaps it had no physical form at all. Perhaps it was something that existed between matter and spirit, a fragment of essence, a crystallized memory of the forge. In the old tales, such things are spoken of in hushed tones. Silmarils that held the light of the two trees, captured by Fëanor at the height of his skill. Palantir that bridged vast distances, allowing the seeing stones to commune across the width of Middle-earth. Rings that bound the fate of nations, tying the lives of their bearers to the will of their maker. Objects of power, crafted by those who understood the deeper laws of creation. But this was different. This was not made by Fëanor or Celebrimbor or any of the elven smiths. This was older, primordial, a piece of the world's foundation itself, something that existed before Sauron's corruption, before the forging of the rings, before even the rising of the sun and moon. A fragment of the original fire that sang the world into being. Gandalf found it in the depths beneath Mount Doom. Some say it was embedded in the stone, glowing faintly like a dying star. Others that it was formless, a tremor in the air, a heat that did not burn, a light that cast no shadow. The truth, as always, is elusive, but the evidence of his actions is not. Consider, after the fall of Sauron, Gandalf did not celebrate. He did not remain in Minas Tirith to bask in the gratitude of men. He withdrew. He became distant, even from Frodo and the hobbits he loved so dearly. At the coronation of Aragorn, he stood aside, silent and watchful. He spoke when spoken to, smiled when appropriate, but there was a hollowness to his joy. As if he were watching the celebration from behind a veil, separated by some invisible barrier. Pippin, ever observant despite his youthful demeanor, remarked to Merry, "Gandalf looks as if he's attending a funeral, not a coronation." And Merry, who had looked into the Palantir and felt the weight of Sauron's gaze, replied quietly, "Perhaps he is." And when the time came to depart, he did so with a swiftness that surprised even Círdan the shipwright. There were no long farewells, no grand speeches, only a quiet boarding of the white ship and a westward gaze that held both relief and sorrow. Círdan, ancient beyond measure, watched Gandalf approach the ship. The shipwright's eyes, which had seen the light of the two trees and witnessed the drowning of Beleriand, held a knowing sadness. As Gandalf stepped aboard, Círdan spoke softly so that only the wizard could hear. "You carry a burden still, Mithrandir. The weight of it bends even your spirit." Gandalf did not deny it, he merely nodded. "Some burdens," he said, "cannot be shared, they can only be endured." Why such haste? If his task was complete, if the shadow was truly defeated, then what need for urgency? The answer lies in the burden he carried. For even a Maya, even a servant of the Valor, is not immune to corruption. The longer he held the relic, the greater the risk. Not that he would fall as Saruman did. Gandalf's spirit was too strong for that, his will too deeply rooted in humility and service. But the relic itself was a beacon. Its presence, even hidden, would draw the attention of dark things, spirits that lingered in the corners of the world, servants of Morgoth who had not yet been banished, nameless things that gnawed at the roots of mountains, older than Sauron, older even than Morgoth's corruption. And perhaps the curiosity of men who, given time, would seek to uncover every secret, no matter how dangerous. For men are the children of Iluvatar, blessed with the gift of mortality, but cursed with impatience. They do not have the long patience of elves, who can wait for centuries for a tree to grow. They do not have the steadfastness of dwarves, who are content to dig and build and delve. Men want answers now. They want power now. And what they cannot understand, they seek to control. Gandalf understood this. He had seen what the lust for knowledge did to Saruman. He had watched the corruption of the rings spread like poison through the ages. He had witnessed the fall of Númenor, the greatest kingdom of men, destroyed by their own pride and their desire to claim the immortality of the elves. And he knew that the only way to protect the world from the relic was to remove it entirely. To take it beyond the circles of the world, to Valinor, where the Valor could unmake it or guard it for eternity. But there was a cost. Carrying such a thing, even for a short time, left a mark, a weight upon the soul. In the days before his departure, Gandalf spoke less and less. He spent hours in solitude, gazing at the mountains, as if searching for something he could not name. His laughter, once so frequent and warm, grew rare. His eyes, which had always held a twinkle of mischief, became haunted. Legolas, who had fought beside him through fire and darkness, noticed the change most keenly. One evening, as they stood together on the walls of Minas Tirith watching the sun set over the white mountains, Legolas spoke softly in Sindarin. "You are wounded, Mithrandir, not in body, but in spirit. What did you see in Mordor that has changed you so?" Gandalf was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I saw what might have been, the light that was corrupted but not destroyed, and I took upon myself the task of bearing it away lest it corrupt others." Legolas pressed no further, for he understood, as only the elves can, that some wounds cannot be healed by words. And when Frodo, burdened by his own wounds, asked if Gandalf, too, had been hurt by the war, the wizard simply smiled, a smile that held no joy, only understanding. "Every victory," he said quietly, "has its price, and some prices are paid in silence over long years in ways that others cannot see." The White Wizard's final secret was not his power, but what it cost him to restrain it. But why? This is the question that haunts us. Why would Gandalf, servant of the Valor, emissary of the West, guardian of the free peoples, choose to steal, to conceal, to bear the weight of a forbidden relic in silence? Why not reveal it to the White Council? Why not entrust it to Elrond or Galadriel or even to Aragorn, the new king? Why carry the burden alone? The answer, perhaps, lies in Gandalf's deepest nature, in who he was before he ever set foot in Middle-earth. Alorin, who walked in the gardens of Lorien, the Vala of dreams and visions. Alorin, who learned from Nienna, the Lady of Sorrow, who weeps for the wounds of the world and teaches pity to those who will listen. Alorin, who understood pity as a force more powerful than any sword, mercy as a strength greater than domination. Recall his words to Frodo in the Mines of Moria. When Frodo, burdened by the ring, laments that Bilbo did not kill Gollum when he had the chance, Gandalf rebukes him gently. "Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends." This is the essence of Gandalf's philosophy: mercy, not as weakness but as strength, the refusal to close the door on redemption, even for the most corrupted souls. Gandalf defended Gollum not because Gollum was good, but because he might still serve a purpose. He spared Saruman, even after his betrayal, offering him one last chance to turn back from the abyss. And perhaps, just perhaps, he saw in the relic something redeemable. A trace of the old light, buried beneath layers of corruption. Not Sauron's malice, but the craft of Alle. Not the will to dominate, but the knowledge of creation. What if Gandalf believed that even this fragment could be healed? That in the hands of the Valor, in the light of Valinor, it could be cleansed and restored to its original purpose? What if his theft was not an act of hoarding, but an act of hope? This belief, this refusal to accept that anything is beyond redemption, is what separates Gandalf from nearly every other bearer of power in Middle-earth. It is a belief rooted in the teachings of Nienna, who grieves for every soul lost to darkness, who believes that even the most grievous wounds can be healed if the sufferer is willing to turn back toward the light. But hope, carried too far, becomes naivete, and mercy, offered to those who do not desire it, becomes enabling. This tension between hope and wisdom, between mercy and judgment, is the crucible in which Gandalf's character was forged. This sets Gandalf apart from every other bearer of power in Middle-earth. Feanor, who created the Silmarils, was consumed by possessiveness. When the light of the two trees was extinguished, and Yavanna asked if the Silmarils could be broken to restore the trees, Feanor refused. He could not bear to part with his creations, even to heal the world. His oath to recover the Silmarils led to the ruin of his house, the death of his sons, and countless tragedies across thousands of years. Saruman, who studied the arts of the enemy in hopes of defeating him, fell because he began to desire the ring for himself. He convinced himself that he could use Sauron's power for good, that in his hands the ring would be a tool of order and peace. But he was deceived. The ring's corruption is subtle. It whispers that domination is the same as salvation. That control is the same as care. Even Boromir, noble and brave, a warrior who loved his people and desired only their safety, could not resist the lure of power when it stood before him. He saw in the ring a weapon that could save Gondor, and in his desperation, he tried to take it from Frodo. His fall was brief, and he redeemed himself in death, but it shows how even the best intentions can be twisted by the promise of power. Galadriel herself, wisest of the elves, admitted that she had long desired the power to rule, to shape Middle-earth according to her vision of beauty and order. When Frodo offered her the ring, she was tempted. For a moment, the vision of herself as a terrible queen, beautiful and awesome, filled her mind. But she passed the test. She refused the ring and chose diminishment over domination. But Gandalf never sought to use the relic. He never sought to study it or unlock its secrets. He never contemplated what power it might grant him, what wisdom it might reveal. He simply carried it, quietly, painfully, across the plains of Gondor, through the Shire to the Grey Havens. And when the time came to leave Middle-earth, he did so not with triumph but with relief, the relief of a burden finally set down, a race finally run, a task finally completed. Mercy, too, can be a form of theft. For in sparing the relic from destruction, in refusing to let it be annihilated alongside Sauron, Gandalf stole it from oblivion. He preserved it, not for himself, but for the chance that it might one day be redeemed. For the hope that even the most corrupted spark of the secret fire might, in the fullness of time, be restored to its original purpose. This is the burden of mercy. To carry the weight of another's potential redemption, even when that weight crushes you. To refuse the easy path of destruction in favor of the agonizing path of preservation. To believe, against all evidence, that healing is possible. And this is why Gandalf could not share his burden. For to reveal the relic would be to subject it to judgment. The White Council would have demanded its destruction. Elrond, wise and fair, would have counseled casting it into the sea. Galadriel, who had refused the ring, would have urged that no remnant of Sauron's power be allowed to endure. And they would have been right by every measure of wisdom and prudence. But Gandalf could not bring himself to destroy it, for he saw in it not Sauron's malice but Alle's craft, not the corruption but the light that had been corrupted. And he hoped, perhaps foolishly, perhaps with a hope beyond wisdom, that in Valinor it could be healed. The sea is endless, gray and vast and cold. The white ship cuts through the waves like a blade through silk, its sails billowing with a wind that comes from no earthly source. On the deck, 3 figures stand, Gandalf, Elrond, and Galadriel, the bearers of the 3 rings, the last of the great powers of the Elder Days. Behind them, the coast of Middle-earth fades into mist. Ahead, the light of Valinor begins to break the horizon, a light that no mortal eye can bear, a light that promises both healing and finality. Gandalf stands at the prow. His hand rests upon the railing. His eyes, gray as storm clouds, gaze forward with an expression that is difficult to read. Not joy, not sorrow, but something deeper, something that transcends both. The hobbits, Frodo, Bilbo, Sam in his heart, though not in body, have been left behind. The age of the elves is ending. The dominion of men is beginning. And those who carried the weight of the elder world must now pass beyond its borders, into the realm where time flows differently, where wounds can be healed and weariness can finally be set aside. But Gandalf's weariness is of a different kind. For while Elrond carries the memory of battles and losses spanning millennia, and Galadriel bears the weight of ages and the sorrow of watching her people fade, Gandalf carries something more tangible. Something that pulses faintly beneath his robes, hidden even from the sharp eyes of the elves beside him. Beside him, Galadriel speaks softly. Her voice is like wind through silver leaves, gentle but perceptive. "You carry something still, Mithrandir. I have felt it since we left the shore. A warmth that does not come from Naria, a light that flickers with shadow." Gandalf does not turn. His gaze remains fixed on the western horizon. "A memory," he says, "nothing more." "Memories," Galadriel replies, her tone both knowing and compassionate, "are never so simple, especially memories that have weight, that bend the light around them, that call to the deep places of the world." Elrond, who has remained silent until now, steps forward. His eyes, which have seen the rise and fall of kingdoms, hold a mixture of concern and understanding. "If you bear a burden that should be judged by the valor, Mithrandir, then it is well that we sail now. But if you bear something that should not pass beyond the circles of the world, then speak now, before we cross the threshold from which there is no return." For a long moment, neither Galadriel nor Elrond speaks. The wind stirs their robes. The sea hisses against the hull. And then, so quietly that even Elrond does not notice, Gandalf reaches into his cloak. His fingers close around something small, something that glimmers faintly, like a coal half buried in ash. He holds it for a moment as if weighing it, as if saying a final farewell. The light from it, though dim, catches Galadriel's eye. She sees it for only an instant before Gandalf's hand closes around it completely. But that instant is enough. Her breath catches. Her eyes widen with a mixture of wonder and horror. For she recognizes it, not its specific nature, but its essence. The echo of the secret fire, the creative flame, a fragment of what should not be in the hands of any being, mortal or immortal. "Alorin," she whispers, using his true name. "What have you done?" But Gandalf does not answer. Instead, he turns his hand palm down over the ship's railing, and then he releases it. The fragment falls into the waves without a sound. A ripple spreads outward and then fades. The sea closes over it, dark and deep. And whatever it was, whatever fragment of fire or memory or hope he carried, it is gone now, sunk into the abyss, lost to the depths where even the eyes of the Valor cannot easily reach. Or is it? Galadriel watches the water where it fell. Her eyes, ancient and knowing, linger there for a long time. And when she finally turns away, there is a faint smile on her lips. Not of satisfaction, but of understanding. For she recognizes what Gandalf has done. He has not brought the relic to Valinor for judgment. He has not placed it in the hands of the Valor, who might destroy it or guard it or study it. Instead, he has released it into the care of Ulmo, the Lord of Waters, the Vala who dwells in the deep places and governs the oceans and rivers of the world. Ulmo, who has always walked apart from the other Valor, who aids the children of Ilúvatar in secret, who remembers the music more clearly than any save Manwë himself. Ulmo, who might preserve the fragment in the depths where it can harm no one, but where it might one day be recovered if the world has need of it. Where it can rest, dormant but not destroyed, until the breaking of the world and the final music when all things are remade. Some things, she knows, are not meant to be destroyed. Some things must be hidden until the world has need of them once more. The ship sails on. The light of Valinor grows brighter, washing over them like the first dawn. And behind them, far below the surface of the sea, a faint ember pulses. Once, twice, and then settles into stillness, waiting, dormant, but not dead. Elrond, who did not see what Gandalf released, senses nonetheless that something significant has occurred. "It is done, then?" he asks quietly. Gandalf nods. "It is done. The burden is set down, and now at last I can rest. And somewhere beneath the waves, a faint ember still burns, waiting. The fires of Mount Doom have long since gone cold. The plains of Gorgoroth are silent now, reclaimed slowly by the earth. Grass, thin and pale, has begun to grow where once only ash and stone could survive. The free peoples have rebuilt their kingdoms. Gondor stands strong under the rule of King Elessar. The Shire is at peace, its hobbits tending their gardens and brewing their ale, largely unaware of how close they came to annihilation. The elves have departed, taking with them the last of the old magic, the last echoes of the elder days. And Middle-earth, weary but enduring, turns toward a new age, the dominion of men. But the story does not end. Stories never truly end. They echo. They ripple outward, touching lives and lands yet unborn. And the question remains, hanging in the air like smoke: what did Gandalf truly carry from Mordor, and why does it matter? Perhaps the relic was real. A fragment of the secret fire, stolen from Sauron's forge and hidden away in the west. Perhaps it was metaphorical, a symbol of the knowledge Gandalf possessed, the burden of understanding too dangerous to share. Or perhaps it was something else entirely. A lesson, a warning, a reminder that even in the darkest places, even in the heart of the enemy's domain, something of the light endures. Tolkien's world is built upon this duality: fire that creates and fire that destroys. Knowledge that enlightens and knowledge that corrupts. Power that uplifts and power that enslaves. Every great artifact in Middle-earth embodies this tension. The Silmarils, forged in love by Fëanor to capture the light of the two trees, became objects of obsession and war. The Rings of Power, crafted with hope by Celebrimbor to heal and preserve the fading glory of the elves, became chains of domination. Even the One Ring itself, which Sauron claimed was meant to bring order to Middle-earth, became the instrument of tyranny and shadow. This is the tragedy of power, that the tools we create to uplift can so easily become weapons, that the knowledge we seek to enlighten can so easily corrupt, that the fire we kindle to warm us can so easily burn down our homes. Gandalf understood this better than anyone. He was, after all, a servant of the secret fire, the creative force that brings forth life. But he also knew that fire, unguarded, could consume everything. And so he chose to be the guardian, the keeper of the flame, not to wield it but to hide it, not to use it but to protect it, even at great cost to himself. This is the essence of wisdom, not the accumulation of knowledge, but the restraint to use it wisely. Not the grasping of power, but the humility to let it go. Gandalf could have used the relic. He could have studied it, unlocked its secrets, become something more than he was. With the knowledge contained in that fragment, he might have reshaped Middle-earth, brought about a golden age, ensured that no darkness would ever rise again. But he did not, because he understood that the moment he began to use the relic, he would become like Saruman, like Sauron, like every other being who believed that the ends justified the means, that power wielded for good purposes remained good. He understood that corruption does not announce itself with fanfare. It creeps in slowly, justified by small compromises, rationalized by noble intentions. And so he carried it in silence. Across the fields of Pelennor, where the bodies of the fallen still lay in heaps. Through the gardens of Ithilien, where Faramir and Eowyn walked in the spring sunlight, rebuilding their lives from the ashes of war. Past the borders of the Shire, where hobbits tended their gardens in blissful ignorance of the weight he bore, singing songs and drinking ale and living the simple lives that made all his sacrifices worthwhile. He carried it to the sea. And there, at the edge of the world, he released it, not into the hands of the Valor as some might expect, not into a vault in Valinor where it could be studied and guarded, but into the deep, into the unknown. Into the care of Ulmo, the Lord of Waters, who guards the secrets of the deep and remembers the music of creation better than most. Why? Because some things are not meant to be controlled. Some things must be left to fate, to providence, to the will of Eru, who alone sees the end of all things. Gandalf trusted that if the world ever truly needed the fragment again, if some future age required its power, then Eru would guide events such that it would be found. But until that day, it would rest in the deep, beyond the reach of ambitious kings and curious wizards, beyond the grasp of those who would use it for their own purposes, however noble. Perhaps every age requires its own bearer of forbidden flame, not to wield it, but to guard it. We return now to the image we began with. Thunder over Gorgoroth, ash and smoke, a lone figure walking through the ruins. But this time we see it differently. This time we understand. Gandalf the White, who was Olorin before the world was made, who learned mercy from Nienna and wisdom from Lorien, who faced the Balrog in the depths and the Witch King at the gates. He is not merely a wizard. He is a symbol, a reminder, a testament to the idea that even in the darkest times, even when all hope seems lost, there are those who will bear the burden, who will carry the weight of the world, not for glory, not for reward, but because it must be done. His theft from Mordor, if theft it was not an act of greed. It was not an act of ambition. It was not even, strictly speaking, an act of wisdom, for the wisest course would have been to destroy the fragment immediately. It was an act of faith. Faith that the light could be preserved. Faith that even the most corrupted things might one day be redeemed. Faith that the secret fire, the creative spark of Eru, would endure no matter how many shadows sought to smother it. And perhaps that is the true lesson of Gandalf's journey. Not that he was infallible or all-powerful or free from doubt, but that he chose, again and again, to do what was right, even when it cost him dearly, even when it meant bearing a burden alone, even when it meant leaving behind the people and places he loved, sailing into the West with a secret he would never reveal. The records do not tell us what became of the relic. The Red Book is silent on this matter. The Grey Annals offer no conclusion. Even the songs of the elves, who remember more than most, fade into ambiguity when the subject turns to Gandalf's final days in Middle-earth. But the silence itself is an answer. Some truths are not meant to be spoken. Some secrets are kept, not to deceive, but to protect. And so we are left with images, fragments, echoes, Gandalf's staff glowing faintly in the dark as he walks alone through the ruins of Barad-dûr. His eyes, gray and piercing, holding depths no mortal could fathom. His hand closing around something unseen, and then releasing it to the waves as the ship sails westward. The light of Valinor, breaking the horizon like the first dawn, washing away the shadows of Middle-earth. And beneath it all, a whisper, so faint it might be imagined, of a flame that does not die. For the secret fire is not a thing that can be destroyed or possessed. It is an essence, a principle, the creative force that underlies all existence. Melkor sought it and did not find it. Sauron tried to claim it and failed. But it endures nonetheless, woven into the fabric of the world, present in every act of creation, every moment of growth, every spark of life. And when the final darkness comes, when the world itself must be remade, when the music of the Aenir is sung again in its completion, that fire will blaze forth once more. not as a weapon, not as a tool, but as what it has always been, the gift of Eru, the power by which all things are given being. Until that day, it waits, in the depths of the sea, in the hearts of those who create, in the small acts of mercy and courage that keep the darkness at bay, hidden but not absent, diminished but not destroyed. The secret fire does not die. It hides until the world has need of it once more. And somewhere in the deep places beyond the reach of time, an ember pulses, waiting for the call that will kindle it once more into flame. Dear listener, this story ends, but many await. Subscribe so no tale escapes you.